Welcome to our deep dive on Relentless by Tim Grover. This book, it's like a playbook for anyone who wants to, I guess, go from, good to great to unstoppable.
Yeah.
And we've got some really good source material here, and we're going to unpack the key lessons chapter by chapter. And I'm joined by, our expert
Of course.
who knows a thing or two about high performance.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I'm definitely fascinated by, what makes people excel. And Grover's perspective, it's unique. He's not an academic. He's a guy who has been in the trenches with some of the biggest names in sports, helping them push their limits.
Exactly. You can tell he's not just theorizing,
Yeah.
He's sharing wisdom from real-world experience.
Yeah.
So for you listening, imagine getting that kind of mentorship. That's what this deep dive is all about.
And it's not for the faint of heart. Grover doesn't sugarcoat anything. This book is a challenge to anyone who feels like they're settling, like they could be more, do more, achieve more.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Chapter 1. The book opens with this dramatic scene. It's late at night, and an elite athlete shows up at Grover's door, desperate to get his edge back. He's lost his focus, his game is suffering, and his team is feeling the pressure.
Right, and this story immediately tells us a couple things. First, it sets the tone. This book is about high stakes, about people who are already at the top of their game, but they still want more. Second, it hints at Grover's approach. He's not just a trainer, he's a mentor, someone who understands the mental game as well as the physical one.
And that's where the idea of relentlessness comes in. Grover says it's not just about talent, it's about that inner drive that pushes you beyond what anyone else, even yourself, would demand.
It's about constantly pushing your limits, demanding more from yourself. Even when you think you've reached your peak, it's about never being satisfied, always striving to be better, to do more.
Now in Chapter 2, we get a glimpse into how this philosophy plays out in real life. Grover tells the story of how he first connected with Michael Jordan. Imagine this. A young, unknown trainer in Chicago trying to get a foot in the door with the Bulls.
And nobody was biting, right?
Yeah.
Back then, the idea of a basketball player lifting weights was almost unheard of.
Right.
The prevailing wisdom was that it would make you bulky and mess up your shot.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was like an impossible dream until someone actually did it. Jordan, who was already a superstar, recognized that he needed to push his physical limits if he wanted to become a legend. He was willing to do what others weren't, and that's how this partnership started.
And that's a powerful lesson right there, isn't it? Sometimes the impossible just needs someone brave enough and relentless enough to try. It's about breaking down those perceived limitations and believing in your potential, even when others doubt you.
So Chapter 3 really dives into the mental side of things. Grover argues that training the mind is just as crucial as training the body. You can have all the physical ability in the world, but if your mind isn't strong, you'll crumble under pressure.
He makes this amazing analogy, teaching the mind to train the body. It's like saying your mind is the ultimate training tool.
Wow.
If you can strengthen your mind, your body will follow.
That's such a cool concept. So for you listening, think about it. What are your mental weights? What are the negative thoughts, the doubts, the fears that are holding you back?
Yeah.
Grover's saying, don't ignore those, train them.
He emphasizes that true champions are defined by what you can't measure. Their commitment, persistence, heart. It's about developing an unwavering belief in yourself, even when things get tough.
Chapter 4 is short but powerful. It's where Grover introduces his philosophy of do work. It sounds simple, but it's about showing up consistently even when you're tired, unmotivated, or facing tasks you dread.
And that's where things get real for all of us, right?
Yeah.
We all have those things we'd rather avoid.
But Grover's urging us to lean into those uncomfortable moments. He's saying, identify that one thing you don't want to do and make yourself do it. That's how you build resilience.
No excuses. It's about pushing past those feelings of laziness or procrastination and embracing the discomfort that comes with growth. He emphasizes the importance of taking action every single day, regardless of how you feel.
Think about it. Every day, you have a choice to either do the things that are easy and comfortable or do the things that will challenge you and help you grow. Which choice are you making?
Chapter 5 takes us deeper into Grover's training philosophy. He believes in pushing athletes beyond their comfort zones, using discomfort as a catalyst for growth. He even says, I don't need to be your friend, I'm here to make you greater.
And he makes it clear that this applies to him as well. He's constantly pushing himself and his athletes further, knowing that complacency is the enemy of progress. He's always searching for that extra edge, that tiny detail that can be improved upon. He's also pretty blunt about the fact that talent alone isn't enough. You have to be willing to put in the hard work, the dedication, the sacrifices that others aren't.
Right.
He's not interested in coddling anyone, his methods are demanding, and he expects full cooperation.
He has this amazing saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's about pushing past your perceived limitations and embracing the challenges that come with growth.
And it's not just about physical discomfort. It's about being willing to step outside your comfort zone in all areas of your life, whether it's taking on a new challenge at work or having a difficult conversation with a loved one.
He's also big on personal responsibility. He can't make you good or great or unstoppable. It's on you. You have to own your journey and do the work.
Now, Chapter 6 gets into the nitty-gritty of his methods. He has this pretty extreme sugar detox program, 10 days, 0 sugar.
He doesn't sugarcoat it, pun intended.
Right.
He warns you that it's going to be brutal with headaches, cravings, mood swings, the whole 9 yards.
But he's not just trying to torture people. It's about proving to yourself that you have more control over your body than you think.
It's another example of his get comfortable being uncomfortable philosophy. It's about pushing past your perceived limitations and demonstrating to yourself that you have more control over your body and mind than you might realize.
He talks about how you control your body. It doesn't control you. You shut out the fear and the emotion and the physical stress.
Yeah.
And you do what needs to be done.
He also emphasizes that he's always pushing himself too, always trying to find new ways to challenge his athletes and himself. He believes that doing the same thing over and over will only get you the same results.
And that wraps up the first part of our deep dive. What are your initial thoughts? Anything that stands out to you so far?
What strikes me is the sheer intensity of Grover's approach.
Yeah.
This isn't about casual self-improvement. It's about a complete transformation.
Right.
A commitment to achieving a level of excellence that most people can't even fathom.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Oh.
But that's what's so fascinating about it. It's about pushing past those limitations,
Right.
both physical and mental, to achieve something truly extraordinary. We'll be back with part 2 to explore the rest of the book and dive deeper into these ideas, so stay tuned.
Picking up where we left off, Chapter 7 gets into something we've all heard about, but maybe don't fully understand, instinct.
Yeah, it can sound a little mystical, right?
Yeah.
But Grover makes it practical. He uses this great analogy of a lion stalking its prey.
Yeah.
That focus, that knowing exactly when to strike.
Exactly. And he's careful to point out that instinct isn't just impulsivity. It's about honed reflexes, decisive action, and years of preparation culminating in that split-second decision.
So it's like you've put in the work, you've trained your mind and body, and then in the moment, you trust that preparation.
He uses the example of a basketball player driving to the basket. You can't overthink every possibility in that moment, right?
Right.
React based on all that practice.
So for our listener, think about a time you had to make a quick decision under pressure. Maybe it was at work in a relationship. Even just navigating traffic, that's your instinct kicking in.
Right.
Now, Chapter 8 is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Grover talks about the dark side. And before you get worried, he's not talking about something evil.
Right.
Yeah, when I first read that, I was like, whoa, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
But he's really talking about that raw, untamed part of ourselves that drives us,
Yeah.
that pushes us beyond our comfort zone.
He uses this image of a lion in a zoo. It still has those primal instincts, but they're caged. And for us, those cages can be our fear, self-doubt, societal expectations.
So it's like we all have this inner lion, this powerful force, but we're often afraid to let it out.
Exactly. And Grover's saying, don't be afraid of that power. Embrace it, learn to control it, and use it to achieve your goals.
He even compares it to those classic stories of transformation, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That idea of tapping into a different side of yourself.
And that's where the concept of killer instinct comes in. It's that ruthless determination to win, that absolute refusal to back down.
He's saying you need that edge, that hunger to push yourself beyond what you thought possible.
And he warns against trying to tame your dark side completely. You can't suppress those instincts. They're a part of who you are. It's about learning to channel them, to make them work for you.
This is making me think about how we often try to fit in, be polite, not rock the boat. But maybe sometimes we need to tap into that inner drive that says, no, I'm going for it.
Chapter 9 takes this idea even further and talks about risk-taking. Grover argues that people who embody relentlessness, he calls them cleaners, are fearless in the face of risk. They don't even consider failure as an option.
He talks about this cleaner mentality, which is about taking ownership, being resourceful, knowing you'll find a way to succeed no matter what. It's like that MacGyver character, always figuring things out.
He uses the example of a military operation where the original plan falls apart. A closer, someone who's not a cleaner, would panic. But a cleaner, they assess the situation and adapt.
So it's not about being reckless. It's about being prepared, having that mental agility to adjust when things don't go as planned.
And Grover also stresses preparing for the unexpected.
Right.
He argues that if you're too rigid, too focused on the plan, you lose that ability to adapt.
For our listener, think about a time when something at work, or even in your personal life, went completely sideways. Did you freeze, or did you find a way to make it work?
Chapter 10 is all about decision-making, which is closely tied to risk-taking, of course. Grover says too many people get stuck in overthinking endless analysis.
He's a big believer in trusting your gut, making a decision and going for it, even if it might not be the perfect choice.
He has this great point. While you're debating, someone else is out there taking action, grabbing opportunities.
He compares this to someone standing frozen in the middle of an intersection while cars are whizzing by. You can't just stand there forever. You have to move.
And he emphasizes the cost of indecision. Every minute you spend second-guessing yourself, someone else is gaining ground.
This is making me think about all those times I've hesitated to apply for a job, start a project, or even just speak up in a meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe that hesitation was costing me more than I realized.
Exactly. And it's not about making rash decisions. It's about trusting your judgment, your preparation, and taking that leap of faith.
So to sum up what we've learned so far, it seems like relentlessness is about pushing past comfort, embracing the dark side, taking risks, and making decisions. It's a pretty intense combination.
It definitely is, but it's also incredibly empowering. It's about taking control of your life, your choices, and your destiny.
All right, we're ready to dive into the next set of chapters. Stay tuned as we continue unpacking Relentless. Okay, so we're back with the final part of our deep dives into Relentless. We've covered a lot, from embracing your dark side to the importance of instinct and taking action. So where does Graver take us in these final chapters?
Well, it gets pretty introspective. Chapter 12 dives into the idea of hard work and the danger of complacency. Grover reminds us that success is a journey, not a destination. You can reach the top of your game, but that's not where the work ends.
That makes me think of all those athletes, who win a championship and then seem to lose their edge the next season. It's like they achieved the goal and kind of forgot about the process that got them there.
Exactly. And Grover uses the example of Kobe Bryant, who was notorious for his relentless work ethic even after winning multiple championships. He never stopped pushing, never stopped trying to improve.
Wow. So for our listener, think about your own goals. Maybe you landed that promotion, finished that big project, achieved a personal best. What's next? Are you still pushing yourself, or are you kind of coasting on past success?
He makes a great point that hard work isn't a skill, it's a choice. Anyone can do it, but it takes a certain mindset to embrace it, day after day, year after year, and it requires sacrifice. You have to be willing to give up certain things to prioritize your goals.
Right. He talks about how Michael Jordan would completely shut down everything outside of basketball during the offseason, just focusing on training and preparation. I mean, that's dedication.
Yeah. Chapter 13, the final chapter, gets really deep and explores the idea of never being satisfied. Grover talks about the potential loneliness that can come with high achievement.
That's interesting. You'd think being at the top would be all sunshine and roses, but maybe there's a different side to it.
Yeah, he points out that the relentless pursuit of excellence can be isolating. You're pushing yourself harder than anyone else, operating at a different level, and not everyone can understand or relate to that.
So you're constantly pushing boundaries, and sometimes that means you're out there on your own.
Right. And it ties back to that concept of the dark side, that insatiable hunger that never lets you rest. It fuels your success, but it can also make it difficult to find contentment.
It's like you're always striving for more, even when you've already achieved what most people would consider incredible.
He also talks about his own experience, how he's never satisfied with his work, always striving to improve, to push himself and his athletes further.
So even for someone like Tim Grover, who's worked with the best of the best, there's always a next level. That's a pretty inspiring and maybe a little daunting thought.
He emphasizes that never being satisfied isn't about negativity or self-criticism. It's about that commitment to continuous growth, refusing to settle for good enough. And it's about focusing on the details, the small things most people overlook.
Now, before we wrap up, there's one thing we haven't touched on yet that's worth mentioning. In the appendix, Grover outlines his jump attack program. It's a 12-week program designed to increase vertical jump, But it's more than just exercises.
Right, it's a practical example of how he applies his philosophy to physical training. It's about pushing limits, embracing discomfort, developing mental toughness.
So it's taking all those ideas we've been discussing and putting them into action in a very specific way.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts? What are the key takeaways from Relentless for you and for our listeners?
For me, it's really about that shift in mindset. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose how you approach challenges, how you respond to setbacks, and how you define success.
It's about understanding that relentlessness isn't about being perfect. It's about constantly striving, constantly learning, and never giving up on yourself.
It's about embracing those uncomfortable moments, those challenges that make you question your limits. Because that's where real growth happens.
And it's about recognizing that the journey never truly ends. There's always another level to reach for, another goal to pursue.
So as we end this deep dive, we challenge you, the listener, to ask yourself, what are you relentless about? What's that thing that you're willing to push yourself to the limit for? What's your dark side calling you to achieve?
Remember, greatness isn't something you're born with. It's something you cultivate through hard work, dedication, and an unyielding commitment to excellence.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even a little challenging. Until next time, stay relentless.